Joining us is Senator John Thune of South Dakota. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, Greta.
So you ready for tomorrow night's job speech?
I am.
What do you want to hear?
Well, I want to hear something different than what the president has said before, because what he has said before and what he's been doing hasn't been working. As you mentioned, you've got a 9.1% unemployment rate. You've got 2 million more people unemployed today than were unemployed when he took office. The debt has grown by 39% since he took office. Gas prices have doubled. Health insurance rates are up 19%. Food stamp recipients are up 41%. This is a really bad economic record. So his policies haven't worked. And so what I hope he comes out with tomorrow night are some different things, some new ideas. And I'd like to see him declare a moratorium until his term in office ends on new regulations. That was the thing I heard the most about when I was traveling South Dakota over the August break. I'd like to hear him say that we're going to do something to reform the tax code and make our country more competitive with other countries around the world. I'd like to hear him say that he's going to send these trade bills, trade agreements up to Capitol Hill, something that he's been sitting on now for ever since he took office. Those are all things that would help get the economy going again. And we'll see what he has to say. You
know, it's actually bleaker than what people talk about. People talk about the unemployment rate, and that's about 14 million people who are without jobs. That doesn't count the about the 11 million who are the underemployed people who've had to accept jobs, maybe part-time jobs or jobs that don't meet their original skills, their lesser skills, or even the people who can't find jobs who've just given up. So it's actually even bleaker as we go into this speech. So it is disheartening. But let me ask this. 9.1% is the national rate, staggering. Why is your state 4.7%? What's your secret?
I think part of it is in our state we've got conservative governance, something that we don't have in Washington right now.
For a long
We've got
time?
liberal. Yeah, consistent over time. We've got a very favorable business climate, no corporate or personal income tax. We have a great workforce, great work ethic, and so those are things that are very attractive. I think that, you know, in South Dakota, it's a great place to do business. It's probably one of the better kept secrets out there, but we're proud of it, and we think the things that we're doing there are working well, and perhaps should be tried other places in the country, namely Washington, D.C.
I suppose that, well, of course, if you do Washington, D.C., with the, you know, we're an urban area where the unemployment is skyrocketing. I mean, South Dakota doesn't have a Detroit, it doesn't have a Milwaukee, it doesn't have any of the huge urban centers with all those sort of economic problems. But there are some states that are doing reasonably well. Nebraska's another one. That's Omaha. It's a big city. So there are some states that are doing well. Of course, there's just a nightmare.
Right. Well, I think there are a lot of states that are defying the national trend, and for some of the same reasons that I mentioned. I think a lot of states in the heartland, in the center of the country, have many of those key elements that I mentioned. I think those things really work well when you're trying to create an environment that's favorable to economic growth and job creation.
All right, I think he's a headwind coming up here, not just because of the 9.1% unemployment rate, that staggering number. I think that the Republicans are sort of loaded for bear and are a little sour on him and have sort of given up and may not have a huge amount of willingness to entertain any of his ideas. Am I wrong?
No, I agree with that. And I think one of the reasons is the gap between the rhetoric and the record. We've heard the president come up here to Capitol Hill. Of course, he's making a big thing out of this, you know, asking for a session or an opportunity to speak to a joint session of the Congress. He's really sort of raised the stakes, which would suggest that this is going to be something big, something bold, something visionary, and something different than what we've seen before. And I hope he lives up to that, because we certainly need that. And right now, as I said before, based on his economic record, everything that he has done to date has not worked. We have lost literally 1.7 million jobs since his stimulus bill passed. That's not a record that you want to take to the American people when he's running for re-election. I think he's trying to change the narrative, but he's got to change his policies, and that's what we're going to be looking for.
Minority Leader Pelosi was not happy that Speaker Boehner said there would be no official Republican response. I mean, after a State of the Union, the other party gives a party response. Why is there no party response here? Is that a snub to the president? Is that a statement that, you know, you're not going to? What is it? Let me ask you.
I don't think, you know, I don't think there's going to be plenty of responses. I think you're going to hear from a lot of Republicans. There are going to be a number of small business people.
They're going to be on here at 10 o'clock.
They're going to be here. You'll hear from them, Greta. But I think there are going to be a lot of small business people out there too, who are going to be commenting on what they hear the president say tomorrow night. And the other thing is, I mean, from what we've seen so far, and maybe we'll be surprised what's being leaking out of the White House in terms of what he's going to say tomorrow night, as I said before, really isn't anything different than what we've had before. And so I think that Republicans are anxious to work with the president if he is willing to do the types of things, to make the types of changes that are necessary to get the country back on a path toward economic growth and job creation. administration. We're a little, I think, skeptical at this point, based on what we're hearing, that that's going to be the case.
What are the Democrats saying to you, sort of behind the scenes, when you walk down the hall and you run into one of your Democratic buddies, and you laugh a little bit? I mean.
Well, I think there's frustration on their part, too. In some cases, because they don't think he's been liberal enough. I mean, they don't think he's doing enough stimulus, more spending, more Keynesian approach. But I also think, too, that there is a frustration among Democrats at the president not showing leadership and acting in a decisive way. I think there's he has you know, this sort of narrative of leading from behind is really starting to stick with this president.
What's that mean? I hear that all the time.
I think the president's reluctant to take stands. If you look at his budget this year, he didn't do anything to address the real serious fundamental chronic problems that we have, massive debt, chronic high unemployment, and those sorts of things. And whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy, he just doesn't seem to step forward and lead. And I think that's frustrating, certainly to Republicans, but I think also to Democrats.
Senator, thanks, sir.
Good to be with you, Greta.